High School needed an announcer for a quadrangular dual meet. Since he didn't have anyone scheduled, he turned to the most logical person to fill in, his wife. That was 1968. 40 years later, the wife of Bear Stevens would become the most recognized voice in our sport. That first announcing assignment turned into a career as wrestling's leading announcer. She has announced at every major wrestling event in the world. State tournaments throughout the country, national tournaments throughout the country, NCAA tournaments at all divisions, junior nationals, the Midlands, world team trials, Olympic trials, Pan American Games, World Championships, and the Olympic Games. Through her words, she gave wrestling a much needed voice. Her most powerful voice came through her contributions to wrestling. A graduate of the University of Northern Iowa, she continually gives back to her college and her sport. She started the Pledges for Pins drive at Northern Iowa in 2007. That drive has translated into nearly $150,000 in support for the program. She was also the lead donor for the Northern Iowa Wrestling Room, and she endows 2 wrestling scholarships for the Panthers. Today, she makes more history. Please welcome the first female to be inducted into the Iowa Wrestling Hall of Fame, Sandy Stevens.
Thank you, Kyle. Yes, I'm an announcer and I'm also a writer. I'm a journalist. But I tell you honestly, I have a lot of difficulty finding the words to express how I felt when Bill Rhodes called me about this honor. I have difficulty finding the words to tell you how much it means to me, who has lived in Illinois for over 3 decades, to become a member of the Iowa Wrestling Hall of Fame. Yes, I grew up, born and reared in Cedar Rapids, but was much more than that. I married a man who was born and reared in Cedar Rapids. I graduated from UNI. We had 2 children who were born in Cedar Rapids. We eventually all lived in Bettendorf and in Eldridge. But it's still much more than that. The first meet I ever announced, as Kyle told you, was a quadrangular at Kennedy High School in Cedar Rapids. A lot of people don't know this, but when I sat down at the microphone, the very first time, I immediately started doing play-by-play because 18 months before, I had taken the certification test to become a licensed referee. At the time, I did it just to prove to myself I had the knowledge, because Bear kept saying, you know almost as much about this sport as I do. And he was also refereeing at the time. We had no idea, but I was given the opportunity to take the test, not wanting to be an active official. And we discovered that I was the first woman in Iowa, and we realized later, we believed the first woman in the United States to be a certified wrestling official, because Amateur Wrestling News did a little story about it. That was the only way we knew. As I said, I didn't plan to be a referee, but what it did for me when I sat at the microphone the first time was make it natural for me to simply start doing play-by-play and talking about what the referee's signals meant. So my first meet, my first quadrangular meet, first time I ever announced, was at Cedar Rapids, Kennedy. My first freestyle meet was at Cedar Rapids, Kennedy. My first state freestyle meet was at West Waterloo for a man named Bob Siddons. And I give Bob credit, and he loves taking that credit, for having the University of Iowa coaches there, who were Dave McCuskey and Gary Kurtelmeyer, who came to me and said, we're hosting the first ever National Junior Freestyle Championships, which is eventually went to UNI and has been in Fargo for over 20 years. So my first national event for USA Wrestling was in Iowa. My first Big Ten meet was at the University of Iowa. My first Division III NCAA tournament to announce was at Coe College in Iowa. The first Division II was then what is now UNI. First Division I, Iowa State. First international meet, the USA and Russia, and that was in Des Moines. You know, a number of people have mentioned my being the first woman to be inducted in this august organization. Well, to me, it makes a sort of sense because in all of the decades I have been announcing, it's the men in wrestling who have supported me so greatly. The coaches, the referees, the wrestlers have never questioned having a woman as their official, as their announcer, It's not unusual anymore to have a woman announcer, but then it was. But the support that I have had from the men in our sport has been indescribable. When we first moved to Illinois, a lot of people said, "Do you miss Iowa?" And I realized I kept answering, "I miss Iowans." And I eventually stopped and thought about that and thought, what is it I'm really thinking when I say this? And I realized that what I missed about Iowans tied with why wrestling and wrestling people are so important to me. Iowans are people of substance, not image. Iowans are people who know the difference between sophistication and class. Iowans are people who understand core values, kindness, the work ethic, family. And that's what wrestling is all about. Wrestling is a sport of substance, not image. You cannot win a wrestling match on image. You can do pretty darn well in some other sports on image. Wrestling is a sport of substance. Iowa is my home. It always will be, no matter where I live. But also, wrestling, I know from personal experience, first with my late husband, Bear, and through the time he coached, and through all of the years since then, when I have been announcing and when I have been writing human interest stories about wrestlers and wrestling. Wrestling saves lives. And we don't give enough credit to our sport for doing that. But I'll bet every single one of you can either point to yourself or to multiple people you know where wrestling made a difference in that person's life. Maybe gave that person the first taste of success he had ever had. Or gave that person a reason to go to school when maybe that kid was kicked out of his house, found his belongings on the front porch because his mother was bringing home a different man every night and he complained about it. But wrestling and his coaches gave him a reason to go to school and to get an education and to become successful. I am so grateful to the Iowa Wrestling Hall of Fame for including me with this august group. I want to thank, first of all, the members of the Hall of Fame Selection Committee. I want to thank my son Scott, whom I didn't know would be able to join me until a few days ago, and I assumed Scott wouldn't be able to or shouldn't because later this week he flies to Boston where he's running his first Boston Marathon. So I'm delighted he's here. He was the only member of my family who was able to be here. But my thanks also to my good friend Karen Fenney, whom I've turned in not only to a wrestling fan, because she wasn't, but to a UNI fan. Doug called her super fan a couple of years ago because she rode with me to Eastern Michigan to our UNI meet. And because I had to go announce a tournament in Fort Wayne the next day, Karen took Amtrak back to Chicago, and then the next day was at the UNI meet at Northern Illinois. But she buys season tickets now, and bless her heart, she came here with me. But also, I had no idea that all of you from Northern Iowa would be here. I can't tell you how much it means to me. You are my home, you are my family, and I am so blessed to have you here. It was such a surprise, but you have filled my heart. And there are just a couple of other things I want to say. Jason, if RAGBRAI is coming through here this year, you need more purple hats at the Hall of Fame. And I want to thank you for choosing purple and gold flowers for the table. See, I notice things like that. I wear my panther, I have panthers on my earrings, so I notice things like that. But thank you so much for gifting me with such a precious, precious honor. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. As always, just fabulous, fabulous stories. It always is impressive, as Sandy mentioned, the number of folks that show up for a banquet or a Monday night notebook, which is a busy time of year, but they come to enjoy what we just experienced now.